We are the live.
Well, you caught me. You caught me working on toys in the definitive film office, the current definitive film office.
We are the
It's been
live.
kind of quiet recently as of late because we. Well, I'm gonna turn the volume down, Matt, so I don't hear myself. Because we're actually setting up a whole new factory space around the corner from this factory space. So I'm just actually working on the printed prototypes of the modern figures. Actually, I'll bring Peter in here. I'll put him here. I'm actually just taking off some of the build lines from the 3D printer. So basically, these are just to test, as long as test the articulation, test the design, make sure everything's working. I actually haven't put Kevin together here to see if he works. We went with kind of a bit more of a Kenner style articulation, just because we're a little nervous out of the gate to do the ballpoint articulation for the figures like they were in the old days, because that requires a separate tooling apparatus to get the socket to work. So we're starting primarily with these notched in socket things. So this is primarily what I'm going to show you guys today is the first articulation tests for the Kevin and Peter modern figures. And actually, I'm really excited about these ones because we've changed the design slightly, so they're basically just simplified down to, you know, realistic modern or realistic versions of Kevin and Peter, just as they were in the early 1980s. So nice and simple. We took away a lot of the kind of the wackiness that was in the Playmates versions and let those be different. Now these are a little sticky because they're in terms of getting the joints to push together, because we're just out of the 3D printer. So you can sort of see that there. So head turning, arms, and legs. Actually sit this guy down all together. So that's pretty cool. So there's the Kevin, and here's a Peter. And the thing I'm stoked about with the Peter figure is that we've actually got the sculptor. I think he goes by DeFoot online. He's a pretty rad guy. These are actually sculpted by Steve Varner, but DeFoot has helped us with the articulation, and he was helping us bring in. Now there's a little glossy here in the eyes, but that's actually because I didn't clean the print well enough because I was in a hurry. But the nice thing is that the glasses are molded right into to Peter's face, and actually looks quite nice and actually works quite well in this one. So again, I haven't actually attached it, so proper articulation. Their hands are now positioned well enough, or in such a way that we can do the accessories in the hands. So yeah, the Kevin and Peter figures, the modern ones. Now, unfortunately, I forgot my briefcase with my other prototypes in the other car. So I made a mistake today. It's not the first time. But I do have an older print of the Peter prototype without the glasses. So this will just give us a good side-by-side comparison. Hopefully you can see that above comments and stuff. So they're actually the more, we've been calling them modern, but today I'm going to call them the more Kenner style, well, modern style still. They're a little bit taller because you lose, as soon as you bring it down to the same height as the old turtle style, they actually get really, really fine and really tiny. Actually, there's an example of that here where the arms and stuff get really small. So we've chunked them up just a little bit, so they're a little bit better for tooling. But yeah, you can see how that difference between the thicker, chunkier Playmate style. Again, he's missing his glasses because they're actually separate in this one. They'll be glued on after the fact. And the more modern style. So we're pretty excited about the progress here. But like I say, we're literally setting up a brand new factory space. We brought in a brand new injection mold machine, a great big one. We now have 2 injection mold machines. We're working out the tooling. It's so hence the silence. We've been kind of working away in the background since the Kickstarter has ended, and of course the backer kit is still going on. So for those who missed out on the Kickstarter, there is a backer kit that's going to run pretty much right up until we're ready to ship. So that'll be for the next several months. There will be a backer kit. So for anybody who missed the chance to back and get the action figures during the campaign, we'll actually be doing that. There's some exciting news with this guy because I haven't actually seen it yet, but he is being completely posed and redesigned to fit this style. So he's going to be much chunkier and fit this, the retro Playmates style in a front-facing pose. But we're working out like how does the pack connect to the front with the accessory, because in this one that Steve Varner sculpted based purely on the original, which we've shown several times, based purely on the original concept art. He is holding the gun really cool out in front of him, but it's not really how they would have done an action figure during that time. So once we get into this pose, how does the weapon still hold and still get those rubber hoses into his nose and stuff like that, which is pretty rad. But it's one of my favorite quotes from, or I guess discussion points from that Playmates meeting that Kevin and Peter were doing at the time, is Peter spent a lot of time discussing where exactly this character got his enormous amount of snot, and did it actually come out of his nose? Where did it come from? And I at the end of the day, I don't think us kids would have really cared where the snot came from, just as long as he had snot. So do we have a question?
We do.
We do have a question. I can't read that small.
It's okay. Was there any ideas in the early stages to do a modern and 80s Kevin and Peter?
In the early, in terms of, I think the question being asked is whether or not we had originally thinking about doing both. Originally, no. We were really only going to make one Kevin and Peter, and they were actually more like these what we're calling the modern style. It actually wasn't necessarily the intention. It was that when Steve sculpted these and was working out the likenesses for Kevin and Peter, so often modern figures are more in this style, and it's not casting any shade on Steve Varner at all. I mean, he's an amazing sculptor, and he really did capture the likeness really nice in a toy form. But obviously, he fell into the pattern of sculpting the way he's been sculpting recently in terms of his whole career. He wasn't going back to this way. These old toys, this old style, were all sculpted by hand. So you're actually working with something that in your hand. So when you're sculpting these out of wax, you would end up with something thicker anyway. When you're working in a computer, the physical size is more abstract. So we ended up in this realm. It was only when we started to really push, okay, how do we get the old retro Playmate style into the figures, that we went, oh, this is going to radically change what it's going to look like between this look and this look. And that's when you guys, the fans who we were paying attention to, started saying, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we had both? If we had both options within the campaign, which meant that we scrambled and had to get the campaign to work with having two. So that's why in the backer kit, for those who have backed it, you got that request, or that option in the survey. So that's and so the Easter eggs in terms of their accessories are the same, but like the accessory pack or the accessory tool will be the same for both the retro version and the modern version, and we're going to do it on the weapon sprue rack like they were back in the day. So those will be packed in. So that's the save on tooling, because at the end of the day, we've added a significant amount of tooling expense, which are molds, which is what we call molds and tooling, by adding a whole different set. So essentially, we are doing each of these figures. There's missing the Kevin version, but if you imagine 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 figures in the assortment, 2 versions of Kevin and Peter and the snot gun guy. In order to do those, each of those figures requires at least 3 to 4 separate tools, and every one of those tools is a very expensive, difficult thing to make, because you're making a metal version of it to put for plastic injection molding. So by adding this round, we're have to save a little bit on having to have the same accessories for both lines. And then I have another question there, and it's really small. Almost seems like the John Snot idea was recycled for Toxic Crusaders. Yeah, it's actually that's actually a pretty good observation there. And I wondered the same thing. Now, that said, the designer of this, or the designer who was working on the line with Carl Aroni at the time for this, a guy named John Handy, was the lead designer. He moved on back to Mattel right before this was finished up. But it was actually Mark Taylor, the guy who co-invented or more or less invented He-Man, who really brought Turtles to life. Now, some of these ideas of the grotesque snot, nose, grossness, it might have just been in the zeitgeist enough that when Toxic Crusaders came along that the same stuff was going to happen anyway. But it is actually, I've thought the same thing. I wonder if there was any DNA from the original Turtles. But actually, quite frankly, you could actually argue that there's a lot of DNA in Turtles or in Toxic Crusaders from Turtles because of the fact that the very nature of it being the same company. So the accessories we talked about, points of articulation are the same, which I went over. The backer kit, which I mentioned again, I will just re-mention that yes, it should stay open until we ship. So it'll be there for a while. We actually haven't started really pushing it out there to make sure everybody's aware of it yet. And yes, we will be doing, and there's a note here for questions in terms of covering things like video games and stuff in the documentary. We're going to cover as much as we possibly can from the entire history, even if we don't have the interviews for it. We're going to build that content with narrators and stuff like that. So is there anything else is there anybody else have any more questions that we can throw out? They can throw it. You have a few minutes left for questions. I will remind everybody we're going to try to be building up as much content, new content, and even bits and pieces from the docs on our YouTube channel. So don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channels and help spread the word on that, because we'll try to share and release as much process behind the scenes as we're setting up the factory. I took some video today actually showing some of that, and I'll get that out there soon. And then, as we build, we'll give more and more of the behind the scenes process. Two more questions. Sorry if I missed you. The retro style figures have leg articulation also. Yes, they actually do. Again, I forgot them in my car, not this car that I have today. So yes, they do. They're actually the same points of articulation, 5 points of articulation. This one's just cast. This one's just 3D printed solid. So it does have. I dropped it. That's how strong it is. 1, 2, 3, 4 in the shoulder, hips, and the head. And we're working on it. If we can get better articulation in it, we're learning as we go. And Steve Murphy said, this is just, there we go. This is just an idea for a little hidden Easter egg. Have the base of the state main for Kevin Meese messages. It's actually a good idea. And not only that, but we could actually do, it's actually when I read that, it made me think of the sewer manhole that they did in front of the Dover, New Hampshire house. Actually did that special manhole cup. It actually would be a good base for either of those. And actually, there's still a possibility that Steve Varner is working with this version of the sculpt, the more lifelike or natural proportion one, as a statue, to have both these guys like sort of standing back to back, arms kind of crossed, as a larger statue. And we might actually do that as a faux bronze as part of the backer kit. We're still working that out. So as soon as that potential comes along, we'll watch for here, and we'll maybe do a whole update of a printed version of that, and then we can do full bronze statues of those as made available. And those will be on like a base that'll look like a sewer and stuff like that. So again, don't forget to subscribe on the socials and on YouTube, and help spread the word that if anybody that's a Turtle fan that missed the Kickstarter, we know there's lots of Turtle fans out there, and it's difficult to get the word out to everybody these days. So share it with them directly. Give them a call. Text them. Say, hey, don't forget that, to get these big Blu-ray sets. Now again, this is just a fake one. This isn't the real one. But yeah, it'll be a big set with multiple discs of just the movie, let alone the multiple disc set of the bonus features and the book and all the fun stuff. So I think, are we good, Amy? Are we good otherwise?
I think it looks good.
It looks good.
Any more questions there?
Yeah.
Unless anybody has
one last question. I'm going to count down. But otherwise, thank you, everybody. And sorry we haven't been getting as many updates as we'd like out there, but like I say, we've got to set up everything as we go. And now as our awesome PR people like Amy, who's here with me today, she's awesome, and she can help us get some more content out there and keep everybody informed, because we've got our heads down and we're working, and sometimes we forget to share the news and share what we're doing. So awesome.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Bye. If I can end it, that would be good.
Well, we don't know how to end it.
Start a poll. No, we don't want to start. PR person is great.